Welcome to this special edition of Hannity, Law and Order in America. First of all, I hope everyone had a very happy Thanksgiving. I'm Judge Jeanine Pirro in tonight for Sean. Tonight, Republicans in Congress subpoena James Comey and Loretta Lynch, but Comey vows to resist. More on this explosive story later in the hour. And Black Friday mayhem. We'll show you the wild footage we've got of what people will do for a sale. But first, today President Trump is addressing the crisis on our southern border and calling for funding of the border wall, tweeting, quote, Republicans and Democrats must come together, finally, with a major border security package, which will include funding for the wall. After 40 years of talk, it's finally time for action. Fix the border for once and for all now. Now, the president's call for action comes as over 6,000 members of the migrant caravan have reached the Mexican border town of Tijuana. And at one point, a small group of protesters broke away from the caravan and got within 500 feet of the U.S. border. And in an interview released yesterday, get this, Hillary Clinton told The Guardian that Europe needs to get a handle on immigration to stop the growth of right-wing populists. Hillary says, quote, I think it's fair to say Europe has done its part and must send a very clear message. We are not going to be able to continue to provide refuge and support because if we don't deal with the migration issue, it will continue to roil the body politic. Joining us now with reaction is America First Action senior advisor and former Trump press secretary Sean Spicer, Fox News contributor DeRoy Murdoch, and National Border Patrol Council Vice President Art Del Cueto. All right, good evening, gentlemen. Thank you all for being here. I have to start with Hillary, only because I always like to start with Hillary. I mean, did this woman, did she have a lobotomy? Why is she now saying, we've got to tell Europe they have to stop the migration? It's a royal to the body politic. Sean Spicer, hit it.
I'm not sure if anyone's listening to her. That's the bigger issue. I don't know what, I mean, it's funny. She stands in the way of immigration reform. She does everything she can to stop dealing with it in this country, and yet she wants to preach to Europe what they should be doing, and then somehow comes up to this kooky response that somehow because they've allowed all these people into their borders, had open border policies, that's given rise to the populist movement that created Brexit and Trump. I don't really even fully appreciate what she's trying to get through. It sounds like a bunch of gobbledygook, to be honest with you.
Well, you know, DeRoy, I personally was shocked momentarily, but then when I thought it through, I said to myself, the truth is that she will change her opinion. She and Bill are notorious for this based upon the way the wind blows. So it tells me one of two things, that, you know, she's a chameleon. No, absolutely.
Yes, she is.
But secondly, that she's willing to throw the refugees to the wolves because she thinks it's helping the politics of her opponent. What does that tell you about her?
Well, I mean, it's very simple. You take whatever argument she's making about Europe and you apply here. I mean, if we're going to have this situation of chaos with people breaking in from the Guatemalan-Mexican border and then breaking into our border as well, it's only going to fuel people who believe in what President Trump says, which is we have to have border security. And I just say, look, you know, if that argument applies to Europe, it definitely applies over here as well.
All right.
Let's see if she's consistent about it.
Oh, she is. That she is. And Art Del Cueto, you are the man at the border. Tell us what is going on there and tell us what is wrong with the President of the United States saying that if you want to seek asylum, come in the right way, come through a legal, entrance.
There's nothing wrong with what he's saying. Judge, the reality is we now have a president that he's doing what no other president has done, and that's pretty much making sure that our nations are secure. Short of grabbing a gun and a rifle and being at a point himself, he's done everything he can. It's now up to the Democrats and the Republicans to come together and do the right thing and help out with the bills that he's trying to present. And I'll be honest, it falls on the leadership within the DHS and Homeland Security. This is a man that's on point, and he's showing he cares.
Okay.
It doesn't matter what side of the aisle you're on. You want security in your borders.
Oh.
You want security in your home. Everyone locks their doors at night.
Okay, but let me ask you this. You said something. It comes down to, the leaders of Homeland Security, and that would be Kirstjen Nielsen. What is she not doing right, or what is she doing wrong?
You know, what I'm saying is they need to get on the right path. When you have a president saying, I need you to stop catch and release, and catch and release has not stopped, I think that's a problem.
Okay. All right. And Sean Spicer, I mean, you were there when all this was, when you were in the White House with the catch and release that was started with the Obama administration. What can the president do about that, especially in light of this federal judge? You know, every time he does something, and we're going to talk about this in the next segment, you got a federal judge willing to stop it. But what about catch and release? How do we change that?
Well, I think this president has actually changed the entire dynamic because he's made it very clear. He's talked about that they're going to be stay in Mexico, apply for asylum there unless they can prove that they're in imminent danger. He has upended all of the precedent that has gone on before this and taken away just the talk and the rhetoric that we've gotten from so many politicians and replaced it with action. This president, I think, has done as much as he possibly can through executive order and action and through his administration, through DHS. He truly does need a partner in Congress in these remaining days of this lame duck Congress to give him the funding that he needs for a border wall and border security and additional border agents.
Sean, you and I both know they don't want to give him the money for the wall. I mean, and I blame Paul Ryan and Mitch McConnell for this. They limited the actual building to $1.6 billion. Is it 1.6 million? I think it's billion. All right. And in the end, I'll go to you, DeRoy. I mean, the truth is that, the party's not working with him. And now he says, I want Republicans and Democrats to come together. What leverage does the president have? He's talking about shutting down the government. I mean, what does he do?
A couple of things. One is he could shut down the government. Second thing, I think once these guys come back from Thanksgiving, he should keep the 115th Congress up on Capitol Hill until January 3rd when the Democrats come in, and they should vote, and litter his desk with legislation on immigration and other things. And the other message that has to go out to all these people who want to rush across the border is, if you want to come to America, do what my mother and father did. When they left Costa Rica, they went to the U.S. Embassy and they filled out visa applications. Fill out the paperwork. That's not too much to ask. If you want to come to America, ring the front doorbell. Don't run in and break in through the bathroom window, which is the approach these people are taking now.
And when when DeRoy talks about ring the doorbell, come in. I mean, our country is our home.
That's right.
And you referred to this. Some people take objection when you call it an invasion. I don't know what the heck else to call it. But you call them a horde.
Invasion.
You call them a horde. That was a word that I hadn't heard. Why?
Because it's a huge group of people from another country that are flying a flag to enter our country. That doesn't look like people that are seeking asylum. It doesn't look like people that are, escaping persecution. They're coming here as an invasion, plain and simple. A lot of it has to do with the economy. Hey, if you guys want to give credit to President Trump, then give him credit because of the economy. That's one of the reasons they're coming up here. The reality is we have a president that's doing everything he can, and everyone else needs to get on board. That's the bottom line.
Hey, Janine,
we all want to feel secure in our homes.
Go ahead, Sean.
I will say that you mentioned at the beginning, America First Action and America First PAC have been in this fight with the president, airing ads, putting out videos, making sure that the research is done. But we're going to make sure that we do our part to spread the word about what the president's policies are doing and to put pressure on Congress as we head into these final days of this Congress.
Well, absolutely. And, one of the things that I think is so important right now is that Tijuana has actually declared a humanitarian crisis.
Right.
And, apparently, as this caravan's been moving, gentlemen, they've stayed 1 or 2 nights in a particular town. And so the town is happy to give them food and give them, a place to stay. But I think we're looking at the crisis of, Guatemala and Tijuana. But Tijuana in particular, in addition to some of the violence that we're seeing, they're saying, look, we need the United Nations to come in. This caravan is out of control. Go ahead, DeRoy.
Well, yeah, I think also my question here is, where is it written that anybody has a right to come into this country?
They don't have it.
If you leave Honduras and you get to Mexico, you're entering a country that's about 4 times wealthier than Honduras is. And I'd say, hey, that's pretty comfortable. And the Mexican government said, we'll give you homes, we'll give you education, we'll give you health care.
Right.
They ought to say, hey, this is great, we'll take that deal. And their attitude is basically like the Steely Dan song, whoa, no, Guadalajara won't do. And then here they come to Tijuana ready to rush the border in the United States. Again, where do we have the obligation to let them in? especially when they don't ask permission to come in here.
Well, there's no question. And Art,
Judge,
why are they not? I'm going to go right to you. But why are they not taking advantage of what Mexico's offering them?
Because they don't want to. They don't want to, because it's not that they're looking for asylum. They're looking to come into the United States because they probably have jobs already lined up here. They probably have people already here that are waiting for them. That's the reality. They want to invade our country. They want to come in here because there's no consequences for them. That's what it is. And it's not a race issue. People need to get away from this. You're seeing the mayor of Tijuana and everything he's saying. No one's calling him a racist.
That's
Yet,
right.
President Trump has said all the right things, and you turn around and you call it a racist statement here. It has nothing to do with race. Illegal is not a race. Illegal is simply illegal. There's a right way to do things and a wrong way to do things.
So well said. And, you know, Sean, I'm going to go to you. You know, one of the things that I saw today was a video where one of these caravan members is yelling, "Open the gates, Trump. We are looking to come in. We are looking for work." I mean, can you imagine while they fly the flag of their own country, they say, "Trump, open the gates." I mean, and God forbid you try to deport them to that country they were waving the flag on. That's why they want to get on our soil, so they can immediately have constitutional rights. Exactly, Sean.
Well, look, I think they recognize the fact that this president's created an amazing economy here in the United States. There's a ton of jobs available, and they see that. They want to come up here for the jobs. But at the same time, the president's continued to be tough on immigration. He understands that we have to have border security. So that there's this catch-22. He's creating an amazing economy where there's tons of jobs to go around, and people are using that as a magnet to want to come into this country. But the president's been very clear that we're still a country of immigrants. We're a welcoming country, but you have to do it legally. And I think that's where where people have to understand that the president wants to have law and order. He wants to have a vibrant country that continues to welcome people, but do so in an orderly way.
Well, the way they're supposed to. Anyway, great discussion, DeRoy, Sean, and Art. Sorry, next time we'll come back to you. And maybe on my show tomorrow night. Anyway, the migrant caravan is causing the American public to pay more attention to immigration. According to a new Gallup poll, immigration is now seen as the biggest problem facing the United States. Yet liberal Hollywood continues to demonize immigration enforcement agents. On the Thanksgiving episode of Murphy Brown's reboot, ICE agents are shown trying to deport a family of illegal immigrants. Take a look at this.
We received a call from a neighbor here about a taco truck parked in a residential area. Noticed the taillights cracked, ran the plates. Seems the truck belongs to a Carlos and Maria Gonzalez. Undocumented immigrants, outstanding removal order.
You guys cannot barge in here like this. I know you're used to dealing with people who are scared and vulnerable, but if you don't get out of this truck, I will spatchcock you.
What did they do except give up everything so I could grow up in a country that we thought was the most compassionate place in the world?
Sorry, kid. We're just following government orders.
Here now from the Center on Immigration Studies, Jessica Vaughn, and former DHS supervisor Jason Piccolo. All right, thanks for being with us. Now, I got to tell you, I watched that, and, you know, for all the time I've spent with cops, I mean, their lives are on the line every day. First of all, does anyone know what the word spatchcock means?
Not at all.
Yeah, it's a way to prepare a chicken. By cutting it in half and smashing it down.
Okay, so Murphy Brown says she wants to spatchcock border agents, which is what a butcher does to a turkey. What does that tell you, Jessica?
Well, it's insulting to ICE agents who go out and put their lives on the line every day to remove criminal aliens who, you know, from our country who don't deserve to be here and who keep the neighborhoods that the Murphy Browns and the Candice Bergens live in safe. So, you know, that's, you know, a ridiculous statement for her to have made and insulting. And, you know, I think it's shocking that, you know, that came so sort of casually out of her script.
Yeah, and she did go off script because, of course, she's Hollywood and she thinks very strongly about this. And let her, if she needs a cop sometimes, deal with that. But Jason, let me ask you, you get this, you're on the ground. While the government hesitates to pass immigration, so-called reform, and I still don't know why it's a broken immigration system. The only thing that's broken is the law. But narcos and smugglers continue to conduct human trafficking. Something like 80% of the drugs coming into this country are coming through the southern border. We're in an opioid crisis. China's now playing a role with fentanyl as well. What is wrong with protecting our people from the poison that is coming through?
There's nothing wrong with it. And like you said, their smugglers and traffickers are using this to their advantage. I mean, we're talking multi-billion-dollar-a-year industry for them. And they're doing everything they can to keep immigration reform off the table.
Well, and one of the things that criminal aliens are removing bad actors from our street, of course, is the goal of ICE. And yet they object to ICE. They object to them doing their job. And even when their statistics are incredibly high in terms of drugs that they get off the streets, children that they protect in terms of human trafficking, they're still being criticized. And so I guess the question is, why is it that, or maybe that's the answer, that Americans now see immigration as one of the biggest issues and the biggest issue our country is facing?
It is.
Jessica.
Well, that's right. The immigration issue is one of the issues where there's the biggest difference between elite groups in American society and regular Americans. And so this shows how out of touch people like actors in Hollywood and their script writers and others are, that they're not affected by illegal immigration. Their neighborhoods are not affected by it. They don't understand that Americans are suffering by our failure to enforce immigration laws, that people have lost family members because of our failure to enforce immigration laws. People have seen their schools having problems dealing with the number of people that they're forced to accommodate, taxpayers' bills going up, and the quality of life declining in certain communities. And this is not affecting the Murphy Browns and the Candace Bergens, but it is affecting regular Americans. And, they just don't get it because they're not affected by it. But I wish they had some sympathy for the people who've lost jobs or, lost family members because of illegal immigration.
And, Art, in terms of getting some legislation passed, Jason, in terms of legislation, I mean, do you think there's any chance, do you guys at the border have any hope that this thing is going to work? How does this all end?
We're going to have to piecemeal it. There's no way comprehensive immigration reform is going to be passed. And until it's passed, the aliens are going to think they'll be able to come over here and get a foothold. And the optics down south in Central America are that, hey, get over here before we pass something. So we need to piecemeal this out.
Well, maybe it'll happen that way, maybe it won't. But the president is threatening, to stop all entrance from the southern border or shutting down the government. We'll see what happens. Anyway, Jessica, Jason, thanks so much for being with us tonight.
Thank you.
All right. And when we come back, House Republicans hit James Comey and Loretta Lynch with subpoenas. Finally, the full story directly ahead. Law and order in America. The Mueller witch hunt is ongoing, but Republicans are still in the process of getting to the bottom of why exactly the Justice Department let Hillary Clinton off easy. On Wednesday, the GOP-led House Judiciary Committee issued subpoenas to both James Comey and Obama Attorney General Loretta Lynch as part of its investigation into several controversial decisions by the DOJ in 2016, the year the Russia probe began. Comey pushed back on Twitter, writing, quote, "Happy Thanksgiving. Got a subpoena from House Republicans. I'm still happy to sit in the light and answer all questions, but I will resist a closed-door thing because I've seen enough of their selective leaking and distortion. Let's have a hearing and invite everyone to see." Meanwhile, Roger Stone associate Jerome Corsi is reportedly in talks with the special counsel about a plea deal. On YouTube, Corsi discussed the status of his case. Take a look.
I fully anticipate that the next few days I will be indicted by Mueller for some form or other of giving false information to the special counsel or to one of the other grand jury, or however they want to do the indictment. But I'm going to be criminally charged.
Wow, all this as Senate Intelligence Chairman Richard Burr says the Senate Russia probe is expected to go on well into 2019. Joining me now with reaction, author of Jesus is Risen, a lawyer, my lawyer, who also has done some legal work for me in the past, David Limbaugh. And also joining me is House Judiciary Committee member, Congressman Matt Gaetz, and Fox News contributor, my pal, Doug Schoen. All right, I got to start with Congressman Gaetz on this. Richard Burr. Their investigation into the Russia collusion is going to go into 2019, and this guy's a Republican? What's going on?
Judge, the Republican investigations here have been too slow and too secret. Here we are now in the lame duck Congress, and only now are we having subpoenas go out to Comey and Lynch. Those should have happened immediately when the Inspector General issued his report that showed that there were these irregularities in the Hillary Clinton investigation that resulted in no one really being held accountable when the law was not followed by Comey and by others. So when you look at the total sum of what the Republicans have done, we drained the swamp of Comey by exposing him, McCabe, Page. In fact, the Inspector General said never before had the top layers of the FBI been cleared out by this. But the fair criticism of us that you and others have logged is that we just didn't do it fast enough to actually hold Hillary Clinton and the people associated with her accountable. And we never had a partner in Jeff Sessions.
Forget Jeff Sessions. How about your own leader in the House?
Well, look, we've got leadership in the Congress and in the Judiciary Committee that's got one foot out the door, and maybe that's one reason why we didn't stick with a tough enough schedule. The most important thing we can do as we prepare for Democrat control is to ensure that Jim Jordan is the Republican leader of the Judiciary Committee. That way we won't have low-energy oversight. We'll actually have a real fighter.
Let's hope so. All right, David Limbaugh, I'm going to go to you on this. Look, Jim Comey says, I want to be out in the sunlight, and I want to resist that subpoena. So he's moving to challenge the subpoena. All right, they want him to testify before a House committee on December 3rd. January 3rd is when the Democrats take over. So you've got Jim Comey's lawyer there, David Kelly, who I suspect will write a brief that's 29 pages long, and then get a judge to take 3 weeks to not even render a decision, and then we're nowhere with James Comey. Am I right or wrong?
You're right about that. And you know, how preposterous is it for Comey to complain about leaks when he's the master of leaks? He leaked something to deliberately start this special counsel investigation. He's trying to inflame the Democrats because he thinks this is going to be fought in the court of public opinion because he has no real legal basis. But what really frosts me, Judge, is that he bent over backwards not to indict Hillary after he laid out an airtight case against her, and then he claimed a standard that there is no, that you had to have a specific intent to violate the criminal law. Nobody believes that. And so he bent over backwards, and the IG said he was insubordinate. Why was he so willing or so adamant about not indicting her that he was willing to be insubordinate to his superiors and not indict her? We do need this hearing. The public has a right to know.
And by the way, I'm not so impressed with this guy Horowitz either, to be honest with you. Insubordinate. Who is he to get out of his lane as the head of the FBI and say, I'm going to speak for the Attorney General and not notify anyone, allegedly, but I'm sure emails will come up that they did. I mean, don't you agree with that, Doug? You're a Democrat.
I'm a Democrat, and I wish I could sit here and say we have all the answers. In fact, we have none of the answers, Judge. I thought what Comey did in July of '96 was wrong. What he did
2016.
Yes, of 2016. I apologize. Yeah. And in October, I thought what he did again was wrong. I'd like to get to the bottom of why he did what he did and get him under oath and hear the answers to those questions.
Okay, but isn't it outrageous, guys, when you think about it? And David Limbaugh made a point of this. This guy is the major leaker. He's the guy who leaked the information to his Columbia law professor friend who we employed as a non-government employee, and he says I needed to get stuff into the public square, so he has stuff that he shouldn't.
We should see if there was anything.
But forget, I don't want to know what he wants to show us. Here's the thing. He was the head of the FBI.
Right.
He ran the biggest law enforcement agency in the world, and when he gets fired, he needs to get something in a public square, which he could have done when he was the head of the FBI.
Which could have been classified. And I think we should try to find that out, too.
All right. Congressman Gates, go ahead.
Yeah, Judge, I actually have no objection to having this hearing in public. If anything, I've been critical of Republicans who think that the way to go after corruption is to have more meetings behind closed doors. I think we should have had every one of these interviews before the American people, ask tough questions, hear the answers, because it's very frustrating when you come back from behind closed doors, Democrats say one thing, Republicans say the other, and you don't have the American people in a position to make appropriate judgments. I hope going forward, more transparency will lead to that accountability that we've been calling for.
David, given the fact that here we are, scheduling the return on the subpoena for December 3rd, I mean, are we ever going to know what's happened? The House is now in charge of investigations. I mean, you got Adam Schiff. I mean, even if Mueller finishes his investigation, you're the lawyer on the panel, Mueller finishes, those guys are going to continue going.
Yeah, I hope they just make asses of themselves and it backfires in 2020. But I agree with the congressman that I have no problem with this being in public. In fact, Comey already made it public with all his interviews when he went out on his book tour. And if you remember, his explanations didn't pass the laugh test. Let him do this under oath and see how far he can go and who he can convince that he had a legitimate basis not to indict Hillary Clinton that wasn't connected to his political and partisan preferences. All right. And David, what about this guy Corsi? I mean, what is the significance of his plea? Well, before he was saying he knew nothing. He had no firsthand knowledge of anything concerning WikiLeaks and Julian Assange. But I think Mueller is trying to connect Trump to Assange, to WikiLeaks, indirectly through Stone and Corsi. And I obviously can't vouch for Stone and Corsi, but I do know that they're a little nervous about it. But I don't think there's any connection in reality. I think maybe Stone was engaged in a little puffery when he said he predicted this, and Corsi predicted these leaks were going to come out. I think he just hit on it accidentally. But any crime that would have been committed is going to be a process crime, nothing to do with the substance of this investigation. All right. This entire thing has been a process thing. And Congressman Gates, when we heard so much about Loretta Lynch and Bill Clinton on that tarmac, only because some local reporter knew what was going on. Yeah. We know there was no documentation. Everybody said there were no emails between the FBI and the DOJ, and of course there were. Loretta Lynch used a different name, and on and on and on. How do these people, how are they not even brought up on disciplinary charges before at least the attorneys' grievance committees?
Well, you're absolutely right. Loretta Lynch was engaged in concealment of her own behavior, of the FBI's behavior, and of the chain of command, really, that we're supposed to be able to rely on even when it is stressed to give just results. I believe that there would be appropriate bar grievances regarding the obstruction and frustration of justice that was supposed to be occurring. And frankly, this is what Jeff Sessions' Department of Justice should have been doing. Over the last 2 years, we had an opportunity to get the truth and show the American people, but because Jeff Sessions was so resistant to the calls for accountability, we just didn't get the right answers. And I fear that we may have a circumstance where Hillary Clinton, Loretta Lynch, and James Comey may never see the inside of the jail cell that they deserve. And shame on us for not being tougher during these last 2 years.
You know what? Shame on the Republican leadership. Anyway, gentlemen, thanks so much for being with us. Next, you're not going to believe what Democrats are attacking President Trump for now. And the president takes another shot at the far-left Ninth Circuit. Stay with us. Welcome back to this special edition of Hannity, Law and Order in America. On Thanksgiving, President Trump held a teleconference call with troops from all 5 military branches. Take a look.
But we have a very powerful border now. We have the Cosentina fencing, and we have things that people don't even believe. We took old broken wall and we wrapped it with barbed wire plus. I guess you could really call it barbed wire plus. This is the ultimate. And nobody's getting through these walls, and we're going to make sure they're the right people, because that's what you and your family want, and all of your families, that's what they want. And that's why we're all fighting. You know, we're fighting for borders. We're fighting for our country. If we don't have borders, we don't have a country.
Troops protecting America's borders. You wouldn't think this would be controversial, but that doesn't stop prominent Democrats from blasting the president over it. Watch.
Do you think the president is politicizing our military?
Oh, absolutely. In the case of the border, this is not an effort to defend the nation. This is an effort to divide the nation for the politics of the last election. The troops were just sort of extras in his political campaign.
I believe that it is inappropriate to require the limited resources of the United States military to be used in such a way, all because there needed to be some demonstration for the TV cameras based on a political agenda instead of what is a national security threat.
Remember, Kamala Harris is the same woman who made the disgusting comparison of ICE to the KKK. Here to talk about this and more, RNC National Spokeswoman Kayleigh McEnany and Arizona Congressman and House Judiciary Committee member Andy Biggs. All right, Congressman, I'm going to start with you. You know, let's talk about this back and forth between the president and Chief Justice John Roberts. The president, of course, continued today talking about the fact that, you know, judges are not necessarily all straight shooters. Are judges partisan?
Well, Judge, you know, I've tried a few cases in my time, and I can tell you that yes, on political issues, I think some of them might have a little bias. And you can't tell me that some of the judges in the federal district court don't have an animus against Donald J. Trump and would wish that Hillary Clinton was still there. You just can't. Nobody believes that. That stretches credulity. And quite frankly, it kind of shows that maybe Justice Roberts is projecting his own naivete, his own bias, against bias, quite frankly. But you know what really is problematic with that most recent ruling is that it was a lower court issuing, once again, a national injunction against this administration. And that's really problematic. We've got to stop those national injunctions.
And you know, Congressman, I'm going to get to the bill that you're sponsoring, the bills that you're sponsoring. But I want to go to Kayleigh McEnany. You know, Kayleigh, the truth is that what we've got forum shopping on some of the biggest issues that involve the country. And in the last segment, we talked about the fact that immigration is now, for many people, the #1 issue. How is it that they keep going to the Ninth Circuit or courts where, you know, it'll move up to the Ninth Circuit, and then some local, I'm calling him a local district judge, gets to do a temporary restraining order that enjoins the whole country? How does that work?
That's exactly right. Yeah, you have partisan hacks out there finding the most liberal judge they can find to then level a decision that rebukes the power of the executive branch. The president has vast power over immigration. That was decided in Trump versus Hawaii when the Supreme Court literally said he has the power to do this. This was after a judge in Hawaii unilaterally struck down the temporary travel ban. The Supreme Court, of course, upheld that. And now you have another liberal activist judge doing the same thing with this asylum executive order. So it's forum shopping, it's activist judges, and it's the judiciary wielding power they do not have to rebuke the legitimate power of the executive branch as laid out in the Constitution of the United States.
And, you know, with the Chief Justice getting involved, it almost is a tacit approval for these local district court judges to say, yeah, I'll enjoin the country. But anyway, President Trump yesterday continued his attack on the far-left Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals. Look at this.
We're getting some terrible decisions from the Ninth Circuit, as usual. And it's a shame. It's a shame. It's a disgrace, frankly. And essentially, they're legislating. They're saying what to do. Some judge sitting in some location very far away is telling our incredible military and law enforcement what to do. And it's not right. Hopefully, we've shown some light on the Ninth Circuit. I know that Chief Justice Roberts, John Roberts, has been speaking a little bit about it.
You know, I got to tell you, Congressman, I mean, when I was a judge, we never, ever got involved in any way, shape, or form. And I said this the other night when I hosted Hannity, that it is so, to me, is stunning that a Supreme Court justice would come out and push back at the President of the United States. The President is political. The Supreme Court justice is not, especially the Chief Justice. But let's talk about the Ninth Circuit and what we've got and how this circuit is, considered almost a circus, given their decisions.
Right. Well, we call it the Ninth Circus here. I mean, it stretches from Alaska to almost the equator. It's by far the biggest, and we can't even get an en banc hearing here, as you know. So we're stacked up. We can't get an en banc hearing, and then, quite frankly, Arizona and the Intermountain West, we're not really kind of copacetic with the California mentality and the coastal mentality. I have a bill to split up the Ninth Circuit. We can't seem to get any action on it, partly because we have California representatives who want their portion of California out of the Ninth Circuit and into the new 12th Circuit. And that's really what's going on.
All right. Kayleigh, what the congressman is proposing is splitting up the Ninth Circuit, which now has 29 justices, the largest in the country. And what he was referring to is the fact in his bill that the Ninth Circuit doesn't reflect the values of the state that he's from. And so he wants to get out of it. And I mean, is that something that we've seen done in the past?
Well, the congressman is spot on. I think this is a great proposal. Makes a lot of sense because the Ninth Circuit doesn't just not represent the area over which they rule. They don't represent the United States of America. They're the most overturned circuit for a reason. I mean, it's a fact. And you look at, by the way, I just got to say, with Justice Roberts there, where was he being vocal when Ruth Bader Ginsburg came out against the president and made blatantly partisan comments that no justice has made like that in the past? Where was he rebuking her? I fail to recall.
Obama went after the whole Supreme Court when he was giving the State of the Union. But Congressman, one more thing to you. One of the arguments, it would seem to me, on your behalf to split that circuit is that there's got to be delays. That circuit has to have a lot of cases, given the huge number of states. I mean, it's like it's California, it's Montana, it's the state of Washington. It's give me all of them. It's Arizona.
Well, you can't even. Who can name them all? Because we're talking territories that stretch down to the equator. But part of our problem is they have twice as many cases at least. That's one issue. And the other issue is, think of where, if you're living in Montana, if you're on the east side of Montana and you have to go to San Francisco to have your case heard, that's problematic. And so they say, well, we hear it on, we can Skype it or something like that. Yeah. That's not real. That's not real anymore.
Right. All right. Thanks so much to both of you. And next, we're going to tell you about one of President Trump's most bipartisan proposals. But will Democrats swallow their pride and work with the president? Analysis ahead.